Is there cake? Nothing.
All right, guys. My name's Rudy. I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Rudy.
Can everybody hear me, or should I get closer? Is that good right there?
Back row's too loud.
Okay.
Don't listen.
So where do I start? So, as far back as I can remember in my life, honestly and open-mindedly, now knowing what I know about myself, my reaction to life was always abnormal. I was born in 1986 in Honolulu. I'm an only child, and there's a reason that I tell you I'm an only child, because it kind of fits the pattern of behavior and also fits a pattern of being isolated and alienated, which is part of what I see when I look back as far as I can remember. What I can see is that I never felt like I was a part of, I never felt like I was the same as. I either felt like I was either surrounded by idiots, or that there were these people in life that seemed to have it figured out. These happy families, these happy children that seemed to baseline be able to navigate through life without any issue. And like I said, when I look back, it was always I was either less than, greater than, but I was never a part of and never the same as. And what that looked like, as far as through my behavior as a kid, long before drugs or alcohol ever showed up, was that I was seeking your attention, whether it was good, bad, or indifferent. And I was a problem child growing up through school. I was always getting in trouble, always in the corner, always having to stay late, detention, and all that kind of stuff. And as guided by that perception that told me that I was either better than you, that you were an idiot, or that you were in on something that was impossible for me to attain, slowly but surely there was this kind of existential pressure that just built. And it was like this kind of slow, ever-tightening mechanism that just, I was a pressure case. And so by the time I was about 12 or 13, and I discovered alcohol and started partaking of that and other substances, it was as if that pressurized, geared mechanism that had just been building was released. It was like 300 pounds of PSI immediately, and I felt a little bit better. That internal dialogue that had been guiding me up to that point got a lot quieter. And what went hand in hand with that was finding a peer group of people that seemed to have the same motives. Not a fan of authority, not a fan of being told what to do, right on board with kind of doing whatever you want to do whenever you want to do it. And then also, partaking of substances. And so I look back at that point in time and I embraced that so wholeheartedly, and I look back at some of my peers at the time who kind of took the same path that I did, but didn't end up the way I did. And I can see now there's a subtle difference between the way that I so wholeheartedly embraced the process of experiencing a mind-altering substance and the way they did. It was recreational, it was fun, it was something used to accentuate life's experiences for the average person. But for me, it was escape from the gate. And I look back on that time in my life and I realized that there were doors that I was opening that in some cases still today I haven't been able to close. I firmly believe that there's some permanent mental damage done by my years of use and abuse. And so to kind of skip forward to some highlight moments in my story, I was 17 years old. Me and some buddies, I grew up here right in Sierra Madre. Family moved out to California from Hawaii. I grew up around this area, so I've lived in this area. So 17, me and some buddies had gotten somebody to buy us a bottle of whiskey from the liquor store up the street over here in Sierra Madre. And we were all standing around back in like the dumpster corral area passing this bottle around. And intrinsically already at this point in my life, I knew that whatever amount of whatever we had, the goal was to finish that all. And so pop the bottle, take the first swig, pass it around, it comes back to me and there's probably about half of it left. And I went and took another swig to pass it on to the next person, and they were like, "No, we're good." And from that point forward, they blurred off into the night, and I ended up drinking this bottle by myself and got enough courage to go and try to order drinks at the local bar at 17. And it led to some trouble. I ended up getting chased around town and tackled by the biggest cop on the Sierra Madre Police Department at the time. And this was in a day and age where they didn't really throw the book at you as hard as they do nowadays, at least from what I can tell. And they put me in the car, turned the heat up full blast, and just waited until I was banging my head on the windows to let me puke. And so they let me puke. I got some on their car. They had me clean it out. And they wrote me a paper ticket, told me to show up at court. They gave me a drunken public ticket. And so with that ticket, the judge ordered me to go to 26 AA meetings. So at 17, not knowing now what I know about being able to forge a meeting card, I show up at my first meeting, right? And it was down at the 9416 over here on Live Oak. And it was a noon meeting, I believe, on a Saturday, if I remember correctly. And I remember walking into that meeting hall thinking I'm about to get a lecture by a bunch of people. And there was nobody in that room below the age of 65. And, you know, it was suspenders and, you know, shuffling around and canes. And so I went in there with this predetermined idea that I was going to get scolded and told I needed to turn my life around and all this stuff. But I didn't hear that at all. What I heard were stories that were similar to what I just shared with you guys about having this issue that seemed to be way bigger than they had ever realized as it was happening, and that their life was basically unmanageable. And so from that point forward, I knew that there was something terribly wrong, right? I knew that I knew that I had this thing. And I remember leaving that meeting changed. And I remember sitting in my car and crying behind that little, I don't know what you call it. I guess it's kind of like an Alano Club. I remember sitting in my car and crying and knowing that there was something terribly wrong, and the way that I had been doing things had been very defective. And so as quickly as I had that realization, it vanished. And I went on to live my life, and I didn't actually end up getting sober until I was 31. I'm coming up on 5 years now. March 11th, I'll have 5 years. And the reason that I'm kind of skipping over that next 15, 16-year period of time, or whatever, is that it was characterized by countless vain attempts to try to do things my way, you know, and countless scrapes, rehabs, getting locked up, county jail, psych wards, all of these various stops, these stations along my way to finally getting to a point to be willing to do something about it. And so I learned a couple things in that process of really a solid decade of relapse and having a clear idea that I didn't want to do this anymore, to have that very quickly just disappear again and try to go do it my way. And so what I developed over that 10-year period is a pretty clear-cut idea of step one and what the ramifications of those facts, what they mean in my life if they do apply. So powerlessness, in my mind, always seemed like I always drink all the time and I can't stop, right? And I've come to find that that's not necessarily true. I've learned over that course of time and continue to learn really that being powerless over a substance, over alcohol, has nothing to do with the quantity that I partake or the frequency by which I partake either. And I've proven that to myself. I go through 30, 60, 90 days at a treatment center, right? And then I'll use that as evidence to the fact that I don't have a problem. So that time away from it's not an issue, right? That's not what defines me as being powerless. What I've come to find is that what makes me powerless over alcohol is the fact that when I do start, I can't stop. And I needed that fifth one so much exponentially greater than when I needed that first sip, right? And then there's the other flip side to that, which is I will repeat the process of getting in a jam, quitting, convincing myself I don't have a problem, starting up again, and just it steadily gets worse. And so until I can do something in between or after that last one and avert having the next one, I'm doomed to repeat that cycle over and over. And I was caught in that fucking, you know, it was like in the dryer. It was like a fucking quarter in the dryer, just spinning around and around and around until I was finally willing. And I look back, and it's not like I gained some ability to make this like profound choice. I look back on that, and really there's no logical explanation why someone like me stopped getting loaded and hasn't gotten loaded, right? And I'll get into what I find the reasons are. So the other part of step 1, unmanageability. I have some weird misconceptions about what manageable is too. And so I can go to the rehab, right? I can get locked up. I can make some like solemn oath to myself that I'm not going to operate in that way again, right? And maybe by not drinking, not using drugs, by baseline, my life will get a little bit better to a certain degree, right? I can accumulate some material success, right? So I can go to rehab, do 30, 60, 90 days, whatever it is. I can get the job back. I can get the chick back. I can get the bills paid. I can get the new truck, right? And I can position myself in life as so that it would look to the average person that everything is manageable. And I'll convince myself that it's manageable. And usually what happens at that point is, I can just have one on a Friday. And maybe I do, right? Maybe I have one or two on a Friday after work. I'm in the plumber's unit, did a lot of work downtown. Maybe I go have one or two at Sam's Hofbrau after work with the fellas, right? And that's it, and maybe I'm a little late home, and maybe I got a little explaining to do, but I wake up in the morning and the world didn't explode. And there the door's cracked. And it's a matter of time before I'm right back to an even worse spot than I was before. So until I can get honest with myself about the internal unmanageable aspects of my life, I'm doomed to repeat that cycle. Because and I've gotten to relapse two ways. It's either I'm convincing myself that it's not going to cause me harm, right? Coupled with that I'm going to be able to manage this. Or I get to a point where I get what I call red button syndrome, which this is fucked. Why am I not getting loaded? I might as well get loaded because this existence sucks. And then there it goes again. So those were two things that I had to get abundantly clear in order to be able to get anything sustainable as far as recovery is concerned. And I've been thinking a lot about this lately. I've got some news the other day that a friend of mine in recovery relapsed yesterday morning and was dead by noon. And so I think a lot about when shit like that happens. This is a reality of our existence, right? And I'll tell you what, it makes me grateful because in the room right now, we're the minority, right? We really are. The majority of people that struggle with the issues that we have are either out there or dead. And that's something that it takes some time to come to terms with, or it's taken me some time to come to terms with. And so when something like that happens, it really makes me contemplate on what I'm doing and what the purpose of our program is. And what I've kind of been coming up with in contemplation over the last 24 hours since I got that news is really, in a nutshell, as far as I'm concerned, from my understanding, basically, after I accept the full ramifications of what it means to be powerless over alcohol, the rest of this program is me dealing with the unmanageability. And so essentially I'm admitting that this is unmanageable, right? And then I'm coming to terms with the fact that maybe there's something else that can manage this, right? And then step 3 is basically under new management, right? And from that point forward, I get into the action steps, and all of these things seem to be tools that are geared towards me learning how to process and accept life on life's terms. And it doesn't mean that I'm impervious to unmanageability, but now in my life I have a set of tools that are geared towards me addressing that. And so now we get into the realm of, is this a logical process? Is there a formula to this thing? In my experience, no. Right? The word that comes to mind when I try to give a reason for why someone like me, with the propensities that I have towards life, with the reaction that I have towards life, what's the reason why I haven't gotten loaded? And the only word that comes to mind is grace. Right? I've been afforded, for lack of a better term, this unfair deal, and I'm on the winning side of the unfair deal. And so I know from my experience that someone doesn't just walk along, everything's going great, and then bam, I'm loaded. There's a lot of precursors in my life that lead to that. A lot of that too boils down to belief or a lack thereof, right? If I don't believe I'm an alcoholic, right? If I don't believe a power greater than myself can restore me to sanity, right? If I don't wholeheartedly believe I'm in need of this kind of help, then I'm not going to wholeheartedly participate in the process. what that looks like in my experience is half-assed 4 steps. Shit that I'm unwilling to talk about, right? I firmly believe that my success, and I use that term loosely, in recovery has been completely relative to my ability to get honest. How did I get honest? Well, I got the shit kicked out of me by life, as guided by, as marshaled by my will. And so things have changed as a direct result of taking some suggestions. Okay. And so I was finally able to do an actual fearless and searching moral inventory, and from that point forward, things have changed. I can't tell you how much value there is in finally letting go of the things that you fear you're going to be judged about. You know, there is a very important part of a 5th step this time around that I don't know if I just overlooked or was unable to see, but at the end of all of it, resentments, fears, sex inventory, all that stuff, relationship ideal. My sponsor, we were sitting on the beach, and he asked me if there's anything that I had left out at that point. Was there anything that I thought he needed to know? And there was a handful of things. And I finally just exhale, right? And I can tell you that was a major turning point in my recovery, was getting rid of some of those things that I thought I was going to take to the grave. A previous sponsor of mine, in a previous recovery, a previous attempt, told me that there's these secrets the secrets we think we're going to take to our grave will end up taking us to ours. And I firmly believe that. There's a crossroads, I think, in the 12-step process, which is right between steps 5 and 6. And it's a reminder to me that just writing stuff on paper and talking about it to someone else is not the whole solution. It's a reminder to me that I don't have the power to remove character defects, right? It's a reminder to me that I've lost reliance upon things human, that I'm beyond just human aid, right? And it's also an interesting paradox too, because I was told that by people, right? People showed me the way to gain access to something that's not human. And so what used to make my skin crawl, what used to be something that I begrudgingly said that I would come to terms with is this idea of God. And I'll tell you what, that now in my life is the cornerstone of all of this. You know, that's how my day starts, that's how my day ends. And so at this point, for lack of a better term, I'm seeking a new experience. And I've learned that I need to take help from wherever I can get it. So I'm actually addressing some step 2 stuff with a fellow alcoholic who's sitting in the room here. But when it comes down to like this program, it's kind of become a way of life. It's step 10, 11, and 12. I look at step 10, and to me that seems like basically step 4, 5, 8, and 9 kind of wrapped up moving forward as a way of life. Step 11 kind of to me looks like step 1, 2, 3, 6, and 7 wrapped up as a way of life, and I use those kind of to counterbalance one another. And then on top of that, I put myself in a position where I can be of service to those who still suffer, right? Not just alcoholics, to anyone, right? And I think that's something that I've kind of been able to digest here in the last couple years, is like, I was the first responder to my father having multiple seizures. Well, actually my dog woke me up. I was there. But like, point is that as a direct result of my recovery, I'm in a position now by default where I can be of service, and I can show up at places like this and just, there's no reason to be nervous because I know I'm going to get up here, you know, and share what's true for me. And what's developed as I continue to grow and change is a life worth living. And I can say that, you know, firmly and honestly and calmly with you gentlemen here tonight. And know that nothing bad can come of it. Even if I stammer on my words or forget what I'm going to say, or the story doesn't line up perfectly, like, it doesn't matter. So It's interesting. I'm going to share one other thing and then shut the fuck up. Right now in my life, due to circumstances out of my control, I have nobody that I'm working with, nobody that I'm taking through the steps. But it doesn't have to do with anything on my side of the street. Just so happens that some people aren't ready, right? And I've learned, for me, sponsorship is a real opportunity to practice the third step and realize that I'm not the arbiter of anybody's recovery, right? I'm not the dictator that controls the timeline by which anybody else recovers. It's clear to me now that I can't rob anybody of the experience they may need to have in order to recover. And so that just is a relief. Call me this time, that time, every day. I don't need to set those kind of ultimatums for people. If it's not their time, it's not their time. So anyway, thanks for listening. That's about all I got.